And developing right now as well, the White House has ordered a freeze of several federal aid programs, including federal grants and loans, which could impact millions of Americans. According to a memo sent by the White House, the freeze on federal assistance is slated to take effect at 5 p.m. That memo specifies that the pause is not going to affect Social Security or Medicare benefits, nor does it include assistance provided directly to individuals.
This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause.
There is no question this policy is reckless, dangerous, illegal, and unconstitutional. From the families who rely upon Head Start for childcare, to the children across the country who depend on SNAP for their next meal, to the seniors who rely on state services to get the care that they need. This policy will disrupt the lives of millions of Americans in New York and nationwide.
So I think what he's doing is similar to what I did when I became governor. We were running big deficits, so I went and looked at every program, and I think he's going to do a short-term, I guess through February 10th, he's going to do a short-term run through the programs to make sure we're not wasting money and they're following the law.
Is it woke to fund cancer research or to rebuild an unsafe bridge?
No matter how much he may believe he does, the president does not have the authority to ignore the law, and we're going to fight this in every way that we can.
Let's wait and see. Let's let him do his review and see what the result is, and I'm sure we'll work together on what the right solution is.
And the reason for this is to ensure that every penny that is going out the door is not conflicting with the executive orders and actions that this president has taken. So what does this pause mean? It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam that has cost American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness across our federal bureaucracy and agencies. No more funding for Green New Deal social engineering policies.
We will not stand by while the president attempts to disrupt vital programs that feed our kids, provide medical care to our families, and support housing in our communities. We won't stand by while the president breaks the law and oversteps his authority as outlined in our Constitution, a Constitution he swore an oath to uphold just 1 week ago. It shouldn't be too much to ask that the president follow the law and abide by the federal government's commitments. Yet, unfortunately, but unsurprisingly, here we are again, threatening to freeze up to $3 trillion in nationwide federal assistance at 2 p.m. Pacific time today, less than 24 hours after it was announced, is reckless.
Agenda.
What we are is him absolutely trying to both set the pace of the policy agenda, but also exerting his authority as not just the first among equals in the government of America, but actually the person who dictates every aspect. So this executive order yesterday to actually try and freeze funding was an attempt to actually show that he was in charge rather than actually Congress. And what he was saying is, I have the authority to stop that. And he tried that, and of course he was challenging the courts. But it's performative politics. This is a thing that plays well for his base, and also actually is a way of trying to get his tax cuts funded, because what Trump wants to do is to actually fund $4 trillion worth of tax cuts, and he needs to find a way of doing that, and part of that is by cutting these programs across schools, hospitals, non-profits, forestry projects, water projects, and the like.
This administration, if you are receiving individual assistance from the federal government, you will still continue to receive that. However, it is the responsibility of this president and this administration to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. That is something that President Trump campaigned on. That's why he has launched DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, who is working alongside OMB. And that's why OMB sent out this memo last night, because the president signed an executive order directing OMB to do just this.
Later today, I am leading and joining with my colleagues, my fellow Democratic attorney generals, in suing this administration to stop this illegal freeze of essential funds for our state. Our lawsuit will seek a court order to immediately stop the enforcement of the OMB policy and to preserve essential funding for Americans.
I think this is not unusual for an administration to pause funding and to take a hard look and scrub of how these programs, how they're being spent, and how they interact with a lot of the executive orders that the president signed. And I think that's the main criteria they're using is, does this implicate, do the executive orders implicate funding in this particular way? They have taken certain things, I think, off the table. Some of you have asked specifically about programs, any program that directly benefits an individual, Medicaid, SNAP, those types of programs are unimpacted by this.
This unconstitutional pause in funding will have a devastating impact on the public safety, prosperity, and quality of life. Democrats and Republicans alike will be negatively impacted by this pause in funding. On January 20th, our nation had a peaceful transfer of power. But let's be clear. January 20th was an inauguration, not a coronation.
Galloping effort on the Biden administration to shove money out the door. By the way, it would probably be the same if the roles were reversed. Everybody tries to use the authority while they have it, but I don't think suspending things and saying, whoa, 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 we want to have a look at them, is anything inappropriate.
The president's directive to pause federal aid, simply put, violates the separation of powers. And I am proud to join this coalition in filing a lawsuit against this action for that very reason. Congress controls the purse strings, and the executive branch cannot decide to halt funding just because they don't like how Congress chooses to spend it.
For all of you who haven't noticed, this is a different day in Washington, D.C. The President of the United States wants to do something about inflation. Where does inflation start? It starts at government overspending, and particularly when it's deficit spending. We're going in debt $1 trillion every 100 days. The best way to start going after inflation is to ratchet that back. What he has said is, let's pause for 90 days. This is a work in progress. Everybody take a deep breath, stay calm. Every one of these programs is going to be looked at. He didn't say, well, we're going to do a 2-year study, blah, blah, blah. He said 90 days, we're going to look at it, and it's working.
And President Trump is looking out for you by issuing this pause because he is being good steward of your taxpayer dollars. It is a temporary pause, and the Office of Management and Budget is reviewing the federal funding that has been going out the door. Again, not for individual assistance, but for all of these other programs that I mentioned.
Nearly every part of our lives is impacted by federal aid. Instead of following through on the promises the president promised to help people, including working people, poor people,
on this federal assistance.
And to your point about the confusion, some members of Congress were saying that Medicaid payments had been affected in their states. The White House then said that Medicaid won't be affected, but give us a sense of what programs might be.
Well, we don't really have a sense, Jeff. We asked the White House for a comprehensive list of all the programs that will be affected, and they didn't provide one. Stephen Miller, a top aide to President Trump, blamed the press for the confusion, but Medicaid websites went offline, according to a number of Democratic senators. Republican leaders in Louisiana asked the White House for more clarity, worried that it could jeopardize their financial assistance.
Well, the way it's working is there is constant input on programs going in right now that are being looked at. One of the best things that's happened about it is we have, from Foreign Relations, from Intelligence, we've tried to get information out of these agencies, and man, it is tough, as you all know. Now that the agencies realize their programs are on the chopping block, they're running out of their cubby holes in mass, showing us information that we've been trying to get. This is going to work. Everybody stay calm. We'll get this done, and we'll reduce spending. Thank you.
It is scaring a lot of people. For example, those we serve are a little worried. Are we going to be able to keep getting them their meals? As far as funding, we don't know anything yet, but it is creating a bit of panic.
The federal government spends a lot of money. We want to just make sure it's going into the right places, it's compliant, and moving forward. So the specifics of it, we've heard from folks back, at least in my district, the specifics of it are unclear to people, and there's obviously some angst, but you have to make sure it's compliant. We're going to be okay. This is going to be maybe, things are going to be okay. We're going to do things responsibly.
This is an attempt by Donald Trump to seize power. This is what a king does. This is not how a democracy works. One man does not decide how taxpayers' money is spent so that it only gets sent to the president's political friends and it gets used to punish his political enemies.
I believe that President Trump is doing exactly what he was elected to do, and this is why he set up the Department of Government Efficiency to do a wholesale review of government spending. There's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. One of the reasons why we're in the mess we're in with the $36 trillion national debt is that we're not being wise stewards of the taxpayer dollar. So this is welcome, and we want to find out and root out the waste where we can.
We believe that housing and health care are basic human rights.
Kathy Alderman is with the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. They found systems shut down.
It was announced and then it seemed to be cut off. And when our grants administrators tried to log into the websites for the federal government, they were blocked and locked out of both of them. We serve a lot of veterans who are sometimes trying to get back into the workplace.
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I can't, pontificate on what's legal, but I suspect what's happening is something most Republicans would be supportive of. Again, a lot of these programs are not things that we agreed with, that we voted for originally, and
But it's the law. It's the law.
well, an appropriations is not a law. It's a directive of Congress. But regardless, again, I don't mind slowing things down, letting the new guys take a look at it.
Nonprofit professionals, nonprofit leaders feel threatened, feel intimidated, feel fear by what's happening with these executive orders.
Worries coming in from Virginians. It is an illegal order. The Budget Act of 1974 and the Constitution basically say that the budget is congressional. It's an Article I power. Once we do an appropriations deal and we reach a deal that is signed by the president, the executive has to spend those funds in accord with the budget. The president can't unilaterally decide, no, there's a budget document, but I'm going to ignore it. What the president is doing is not only illegal, it's not only chaotic and damaging to Virginians, it's betraying a deep insecurity.
Pause on federal funding. How long is this pause going to last?
Well, the terms of the executive order is 90 days, but it's important to understand that it's a review process to say that there's, for discretionary spending is not directed by Congress or required by law. So this would be, for example, something like a contract to a non-governmental organization to teach, say, critical race theory. But there has to be a politically appointed individual in the departments or agencies who simply reviews and approves the expenditure so that we have control, democratic control over the operations of government.
Because of the lack of clarity and specificity, a lot of people are assuming that their programs are shut down, that they can't go forward with contracts, with grants, with loans. Everything is affected by the federal dollar and the federal investment. And so I think they've unleashed chaos because they're sloppy and because their goal in it, which is to refashion the federal government, is neither realistic nor desirable.
Well, I think it's a fair proposition. We should, number one, look at who we're giving a grant to.
There are grants and grants, and some of them are for students, many people that live in 27, and I need to make sure that my Trump people know that they need to release it. It will happen. It's just that this is the Trump wave. He's delivering on what he promised.
Every one of our offices has been deluged with calls from people who are in panic. What is this going to mean? It's a dagger at the heart of the average American family in red states, in blue states, in cities, in suburbs, in rural areas. It is just outrageous.
Senator